Okay, so cost avoidance and normalized savings. This is going to be a pretty simple one. I'm going to go over the basics of what's energy avoidance, and in the ESCO industry, they often will call it cost avoidance. What's normalized savings, and how to do it, how to do normalized savings. Okay, so in EVO, it's the core concepts. They have, I took this picture from core concepts, and there's when you're calculating energy savings in M&V, there's a couple ways of going about this. There's the avoided energy use, they call it, or avoided costs. That's what ESCOs typically do. And then there's normalized. Okay. And in metrics, so a lot of ESCO people use option C. I mean, a lot of them don't. But when they do use it, a lot of them use metrics. Some of them use Excel, but a lot use metrics, or a lot have graduated over to option C, which is the replacement of metrics. And they've been doing energy avoidance all this time. So what you've been doing is energy avoidance. And basically all it is, you take 12 years of bills, or 12 months of bills, do a regression versus weather or other variables. And that's a model, and it represents what you would call, we call baseline or adjusted baseline, depending how you want to term it. And that model represents how much energy your building would have used if the ESCO never did the project. Okay, hope that makes sense. I'm going to go over this a little more, and this is really, for a lot of you, it is review, and I get it, but there's a few, younger folks that maybe this isn't so much review, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Don't worry about it. Okay, so here's 12 bills, and it's they're plotted of usage per day versus cooling degree days per day. And there's a regression that's done here. And that's regression, or a fit line, it's got an equation. It's y equals mx plus b, and it might look like this, where b is the y-intercept. That's this whole term. And then the m is the slope, and that's this, and x is the independent variable. Okay. So this fit line has an equation, which we just saw. That's called the baseline equation. Okay. And that baseline equation and the fit line, they're exactly the same. And they pretty much represent base year bills, but they're not exactly the same as the bills. Okay. But they're a representation of the base year bills. Okay. So when we're doing energy avoidance or cost avoidance, we throw out the bills. We don't need them anymore. We use those to get this model or this baseline equation. And that represents your energy usage patterns during the base year, the pre-retrofit period before the ESCO did any work. Okay, so what good is the equation? This is the equation that we saw. I think this is the same equation from before. We get a post-retrofit year bill. This is after the ESCO's installed stuff. We determine a number of days in the bill and the number of cooling degree days, and you plug those into this equation. So here is an example of a sample bill, 700 degree days, 30 days. You plug that into the equation and you end up determining this baseline or adjusted baseline. And that is how much energy would have been used based on base year energy usage patterns and current conditions. Current conditions meaning the current weather and the current number of days in the bill. So then savings or usage avoidance, as it's termed in core concepts, would be baseline minus actual, or this I guess they call it adjusted baseline. So that would be what we just calculated up here, minus what the actual bill was, and that would be how much you saved, or the cost avoidance or usage avoidance. Okay, so that's pretty simple. And for most of you on this call, this is like a waste of time because you already know it. But I wanted to explain it so that when we explain normalized savings, it's obvious what the difference is. Now, with normalized savings, we do two regressions. So one for the base year and one for the post-retrofit period. Okay, and then what you do is then you apply TMY weather data to both regressions. So this is an example of two different periods. So I have a pre-retrofit, that's the upper line, in the upper, the blue. So that would be the pre-retrofit bills. This is usage versus cooling degree days. And then the lower line, and I guess God, I don't even know what color that is. But the purple line, that would be the post-retrofit model. So I have two models. I just put them on one graph, but they both have different equations, of course, for their models. And that was what the same models might look like versus time. And then there's a bunch of, you can get all this stuff like, there's 12 bills, the linear regressions, what's the balance points, the CVR minus CR squared, all of that stuff. And then you apply those two models to this average weather data, the TMY. And you end up with pre-retrofit usage, post-retrofit usage. Okay, so it's not real weather, it's this averaged weather. Okay, so yeah, this is what you might see. So here's the TMY period, that would be each month, how many days in the month, cooling degree days based on the different balance points and what the pre and post retrofit kilowatt hours would be and what the savings are. So this is normalized savings. It's a different method. And so why would you do this? Well, yeah, if it's not a multi-year, if you're not doing a multi-year contract, where you're tracking savings over 10 or 20 years, and you want to show savings right now, first year, get paid and move on, that's perfect, right? That's what you would do. If you use the energy avoidance or cost avoidance method, then, it could be a disaster, because let's say you had an air conditioning, a bunch of HVAC controls and a chiller replacement. You did it in Phoenix, where there's a lot of air conditioning, maybe a little heating, but it's mostly an air conditioning thing. And then in your post retrofit period, it's not very hot. And then you end up with a lot less savings because it's not hot. And people, I don't think companies want to take that risk. So it might be better if they're only going to do 1 year to use this normalized savings, right? Because they're using average weather. So this isn't really the way performance contractors do it, because we're used to demonstrating savings every year. But utility programs, they often will do this because they want to get paid and move on. But there's times when you're doing a performance contract where they're going to change the facility, maybe that maybe this method could keep you from having to do baseline adjustments, baseline modifications, or NRAs, same thing. Okay, so if they're doing a remodel in 2 years and it's going to just screw everything up, yes, you can write your baseline adjustments. It's a hassle. It's hard to get the right number, impossible actually. And you got to get agreement, and it could lead to contention with the client. Maybe this is a better way. Maybe this is a case-by-case basis. It really depends on also who's making these judgments. All right. In fact, I just was going over a project where they did an option D guarantee, but they only did option D in the first year, on year 1, and then they just assumed, since we met the savings, every year is the same. So there's like 10, 15 years, and the savings number in kilowatt hours and therms is exactly the same as year 1. They weren't going to they were monitoring the data and retro commissioning every 3 or 4 years. That was part of their M&V plan, but they weren't putting the new set points or whatever they found from retro commissioning into the model. They just chose to do it once. I'm not going to critique that or say it's a good or bad method. I'm just saying that was the method they chose. And yeah, so another method they could have chosen would be to do option C and then do this normalized savings approach. So how do you do it? Well, these are the steps, and I'm not going to read them because that's boring. I'm going to show it to you. So I'm going to take you through this step by step. Okay, but first, I guess I should say, what is option C? Well, we all know option C is one of the M&V options that IPMVP and ASHRAE and BPA and BEMP guidelines, they all talk about these 4 options, and option C is one. I know that. And so maybe I totally confuse things, but I named this software option C because that's what it does, option C, M, and B. So that's what this is. It's a software. Metrics was a software, or still is a software that's still used by ESCOs that has been doing option C since the late 90s. Well, this is pretty much, Metrics had a few issues with database size and slowness, and this kind of took care of those issues. And that's why, that's why we end up with a new generation of software. So it's option C. That's what it is. So now I'm going to show you the steps. Oops. Okay, so I'll just do it. So hold on a second. What I'm going to do is open option C. There it is. And I'm going to start with, there it is, with that Gulf Med project, which was in Metrics. So I'm going to convert that Gulf Med project from Metrics into an option C project. So that would be in here, Metrics, data, that one. And I'll just call it the same thing, and I'll leave it in the same directory. So why am I doing this? Basically, Gulf Med has a lot of data. It has several years already in it. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a project that already had data. So, and also the old timers, that would be anyone who was raised in Metrics, they know Gulf Med, or has been in any of my trainings, they know it and they've used it. And so it's just kind of familiar territory. Okay, so here it is. Now, let's see if I can get these steps right. So first thing you're going to do is you go to settings, and we're going to, right here, do normalize. Okay. And apply changes. Now we can go back. Now everything looks the same, except for if you go into a meter, you'll see it looks a little different. Let's see why. Because now I have a pre-retrofit tuning and a post-retrofit tuning tab, and I have a compare tunings tab. So these two tabs are new that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. Okay. I'm going to, now to do this, I need that weather, that other weather. So I'm going to import the other weather. I can't remember how to do it. I think I do it here. Shoot. Oh, that's how I do it. So I'm going to import weather. It's TMY weather. I'll go find it. Okay, and this is in Alabama. So Mobile. I don't know if I should do airport or downtown. I'll just do downtown. And next, import. Okay, so it says it worked. So then if I go to the site, I'm going to add my TMY weather. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to go and do these two tunings. So I don't know if you remember, you probably don't. I've looked at Gulf Med hundreds of times. You've probably only looked at it a few times. But this project was made in like 1997 or 98. So they didn't do full year baselines. They did like 18 months. Oh, there's one other thing. I don't want to talk about this right now. I don't, so I'm just going to do it. I've talked about this in other regressions, I'm sorry, in other webinars. I don't want to go off on a red herring here, so we'll just keep it as it is. So 12 bills, I'll just do the first 12 bills. I have one that's deselected. I can select it if I want to, but I'm just going to leave it deselected just to show that I can do so. I will see what is the best balance point. It's saying 40 or 9 or 50. I'll go at 50. Just because it's a 49 is kind of low, but it probably is okay. All right, so that's that. Now I'm going to do a post-retrofit tuning. So this would be after the retrofit was installed. It would probably be the first 12 months afterwards. I'm going to use 1995 because I know it was installed by 95. So I don't know what number to put in here, but I'm okay. So I got close. That one. No, this one. Okay, I'll use these 12. Okay, and so then I think it's probably going to be cooling. Yes, it is. And 68 now. So, okay, 68. Good. Okay, so that's the two regressions are done. Okay. You can see the statistics for those of you who aren't familiar with our software. They're right there. All right, you saw this next screen. I showed it to you in the slideshow, but this is showing probably exactly or very close to exactly the same thing as what you saw. Okay, so the number of deselected points, I have 1, none. The balance points, the CVRMSC and R squared value and all that stuff. It's all here. Now, I guess, I don't know if you can, oh, you can copy and paste all this now, put it in Excel if you wanted to, or you can make a graph. We added a report on that. That's right here. So it's the normalized savings tuning details. So this one. Oh, you know what? I'll do it on the other meter too while we're at it. So let's go to the gas. Okay, so pre-retrofit. I'm just doing it again, just to reinforce. So if it's done more than once, then you will remember easier. So I'll do the first 12. Balance point analysis, look for it. 67 looks fine. Okay, so that one's done. And then this one again, I want to start in 1995. And so we'll start at 34 again. Way off. Awesome. Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, and then that would be probably heating degree days. If you didn't know, I was guessing, but you can just look here and see. Well, oh, this is gonna be a terrible fit. Look at those 2 points. But yeah, it almost looks like it cools too, but I'm just gonna guess it doesn't. So I'll go with heating only. Okay, so it's 70 degrees. That's a little high. So it says if it's 71 degrees outside, it starts heating. My gosh, 71 and below. That's a little high. I'm gonna go 70. I still think it's a little high, but it's below at least the temperature set point. Okay, it's saying it's got a bad T statistic. I wonder what will happen if I change this. Oh, so it really wants it to be higher. I'm gonna stick with what I got. It must be these those 2 bills that were these 2 bills it doesn't like. Interesting. So yeah, in real life, maybe what you might do is you might deselect these bills. I don't know. If you knew why they were so screwed up, not why they are. But I'm going to leave them in just for the hell of it. Okay, so that's that. So I've done 2 of these fits. Again, I can look at the compare tunings, and we've seen these before. So this is time versus heating degree days. Okay. Oh, versus outside air temperature. That's kind of interesting. So this is showing it using TMY data over here. And you can see that they're heating a lot less. And actually, even their base load's less. Okay, so then if you go to reports, you can go to the normalized savings report, and we'll do all meters, and I'll just run it. Okay, I got 12 pages. All right, so this is detailing what's involved in the regression. So what are the bills? How far off are the bills from the bit line? That's what the deviation is. So I have the pre and post. I didn't do the demand. I think I forgot, but we'll see that in a minute. So then this is a comparison of the 2. So there's the regression equations. You saw this table already. So just all the information associated. Here's where we apply the TMY data. Okay, and then this is, I forgot to do demand, so I'm not going to touch demand because I think the other post I didn't do. So let's go past that. And then here is the gap. Okay, so that's pre, post, comparison, and yeah, savings. That's it. So let me see what I got. have no idea what time it is. Give me a sec here. Yeah, that was the fastest webinar I think we've ever done. So that's it. That's all I got. I'm going to see if there's any questions, and then we'll move on to our next. Oh yeah, here we go. Another question. What determines the cooling balance point? Oh, so what I did when I was doing these, let me go back to this. So the cooling balance point would be for electric. I know you knew that. And I go to one of these tunings. What we did here, so the old-fashioned way was we used to look at the outdoor temperature graph, and we would assume that there was a line going straight and then one that was slanting up. You really can't see one going straight across right here, but I could imagine one, and I think it's going to be somewhere around here. And where these two lines intersect, actually, so I can look 50. So maybe there isn't one going straight, but where they intersect is what you would call the balance point. And the balance point represents at what temperature the building starts to cool, at what ambient temperature. But what we found is that generally, it's not so much the intersecting lines, it is when do you get your best fit? And that usually happens at the best balance point for the building. So we did this balance point analysis thing where we used different balance point temperatures from 20 all the way to 80, and we calculated the R-square value. I mean, we did fits for all of them and calculated the R-square value, the CVRMSE, the standard error, the estimate for all of them, and then identified which one is the best. In other words, what's the best R-squared value and the best CVRMSE? Usually they're the best at the same point. Usually. For demand, it's a different story. They're the best at different points often, but for energy, they're often at the same. And so we just picked the one that was near the best. I hope that answered that question. Let's see what else I got for questions. Hey, question from Larry. This actually is in the latest release that you have. We put out a release, I think it was at the end of the year, so maybe December something, and that's when it went out. So if you got the latest release, you already have it now. Yeah, thanks. That was Larry. Thanks for prompting me, because that was exactly what I did want to tell you. Oh, yeah. Okay, I do have another question. What would typically cause the normalized savings to be better than avoided energy? Well, better. What does that mean? Does better mean you get a bigger number? Maybe that's what he means. It all depends on the weather. And I think it was in my first example. So if you did the typical energy avoidance or cost avoidance method, and let's say we start entering, and it's in Phoenix or Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where there's a lot of cooling and not a lot of heating. And then all of a sudden we start entering a little ice age. Then there's not a lot of cooling happening anymore. Then you're not going to get a lot of savings, because how much energy would the chiller have used? Well, we weren't even going to turn it on because it was so cold all summer. So if the performance period weather is too cold, or is a lot colder than the base year weather, no, colder than average weather, then you're going to end up with less savings using avoided energy or avoided cost. And the normalized would be better. But if it's a warm year and warmer than average, then it would be better to use normalized savings, assuming better means more savings. If you're talking about better and what's more accurate, I don't know, I would think the normalized is less. Well, there's arguments can be made on both sides. You can say normalized is more accurate because it's a normal year. That's normal. And you can't just use a year that's hot or cold and use that as your to demonstrate savings. It's like you're totally at the mercy of weather. So it's a good question, but yeah, I don't have a great answer. All right, so that's it. I'm gonna go. Hey, thanks for coming. Please come back next month. I'm sorry it was so short, but there wasn't a lot here. It was an easy topic. Thank you.